Hello, my name is Dame De Saint-Simone, and I will be talking to you today of a very, very important and serious issue, maybe the most important issue to understand with clarity in our days. And that is the nature of the Antichrist. Who is he? Why does he have so much power over humans? And most important than anything is to remember when we deal with an issue like this, with a subject like this, is to remember the words of Paul de Tarsus. And he said to us, "For we wrestle not against humans," remember that, "but against powers and sovereignties and principalities and thrones, who started the darkness of this world, the spiritual army of evil in the cosmos." He knew exactly what he was talking about. And this is who we wrestle against now also. In order to understand who the Antichrist is, we need to remember these words and know that when St. John hid his identity in the number 666, it was to protect it because it was the most important thing for us to know, and he didn't want to have the conclusions, the intellectual conclusions of others or the misunderstanding of others to twist this truth that is so vital for human beings to understand. So when I decided to start searching for the identity of the Antichrist, I followed St. John's advice and started searching first for the numerological system that was in use at the time that St. John wrote the Apocalypse and Revelations, which was in the year 96 AD. And I found a numerological system that was devised by a disciple of Valentinos, a disciple of St. John, and was in use at that time. And using that numerological system, I computed the number 666 and found extraordinary information connected to this mystery. This is my computation. I published now, is available in Amazon, and here is the cover of the book. It's called The Exact Computation of the Number 666. And in the back you see me lecturing about this truth in Europe, and the medal, the silver medal of Alcala that I was awarded with because of this work by the Jesuits, and it was a high honor given to people that can help humanity with the information they give. So this is another book of mine that is more complete about the Antichrist. It's not only the computation is included in it, and here it is, the cover of it. And in the back is the quote of St. Paul that I just read to you. Now, in this quote, he uses the word darkness as it was used then, started the darkness of this world. And the word darkness doesn't mean, in the original etymological sense of the word, what we understand of it now, which is light is when there is a lot of light, darkness is when everything is black and dark, and we cannot see. No, this is not the meaning of darkness in the original sense. It meant a centrifugal point that absorbs everything into itself. In a human sense, it would be the ego. So Satan also is the father of the ego, who started everything connected to this type of darkness. This is what he's talking about. Started the darkness of this world, the disconnection from our true nature happened then. So it is important, the first thing, it is important to understand that the biggest problem we have in understanding who we are is the biggest problem in understanding who the Antichrist is. The first thing I want to say is that he is the father of the ego. And this is why he has so much power over human beings. So much power that Jesus said, when he comes, you will reject me, and you will embrace him and worship him. And these are words of Jesus. So you can really tremble, because he is talking with knowledge, and he's not talking of something he doesn't know. He knew this was coming, and that we will relate to him because of our ego identification. So it is important to start identifying with your higher self, that unlimited being that we were meant to be, Christ-like being, with unlimited potentials of being, and that Jesus came to show us that we are, and tell us that we must remember our true identity. This is what he was doing here, trying to rescue us from this identification with what we are not, that keep us in bondage. So, the first thing I want to say is the Antichrist is expected by three major religions. Those are the Catholic religion, the Islamic Muslim religion, and the Jews, the Jewish religion. The Antichrist is expected as a deceiver and an evil entity by the Catholic and the Muslim religions. And he is expected as the Messiah by those who rejected Jesus, the Christ, as the Messiah, who are the Jewish. So you have here three major religions, two who expect Jesus to come as the Messiah. The other expect the Antichrist as the Messiah. The Muslim and the Catholic religion expect Jesus, actually the Muslim religion expects Jesus to come in a very drastic moment in which their leader, Mahdi, is going to be cornered by the Antichrist. And at this point in Damascus, Jesus is supposed to descend from heaven with heavenly forces and dispose of the Antichrist, who has been already in power. Remember that. before that moment happens, the Antichrist must come, and also the Mahdi, the leader of the Muslims, will come before Jesus comes. So this is extremely important. And who is the Antichrist? According to Christian eschatology and according to St. John, he is the entity, the incarnation of Satan, the entity that rebelled against the will of God because he didn't want to worship the human form that God had emanated out of himself to his image and likeness. And he says, I will not worship that creature. I have a higher birth. And he rebelled and cut himself off from the high will, supreme will, and cut himself off. This separation from God caused his downfall. And if you understand that, you will realize why he has such hatred against humanity and why we are now being attacked in so many ways. We are being poisoned by food, air, water, poisoned by information, sound waves, wars, many things. Humanity is under attack of this force. And this force has one end, and that is to govern the world, the whole world, one world power, one world government. And as God, he wants to be worshipped. That is what is predicted. And you need to understand that this entity, his power is already influencing everything on earth. So there's lots of confusion. And you need to know this. He will be very attractive to that which you're not, which is your ego, your persona. Most people are identified totally with their physical form and their ego nature. And in our society, the ego is meant to be built and made to be strong and etc. Everything is very materialized right now. And we have forgotten our true essential nature, which is most important to understand in this moment, in time and space. We have the Vatican taken over by the dark forces. There is apostasy in the Vatican now. This man who is now the head of the Vatican, and many people call Pope, is an anti-Pope. And he's not only a blasphemer, he is the false prophet of Revelations of St. John, the one that when he speaks has frogs and toads and reptiles come out of his mouth. and he is an apostate. Apostasy is now reigning in the Vatican. And this is predicted that it was going to happen, okay? Before the Antichrist manifest, apostasy must happen. Apostasy of the first class. For instance, this man that rules now the Vatican has publicly said that we who are followers of Jesus should not be disappointed with failures, because after all, we are followers of Jesus, who failed us at the cross. That's what he said. That is apostasy. It's not just a mistake. It's a grievous, not only blasphemy, a statement that established in one of the greatest principles and truths of Christendom, erases it with the word failure. What Jesus did at the cross was the most extraordinary, heroic feat ever done in the history of humanity. He conquered death. He conquered pain, his own power, ego, that he had as human. In that moment when he was suffering the most excruciating pain, humiliations, blasphemies, everything was being thrown against him. He didn't react once with the power that he had, and could have ended with everyone that was abusing him. With one thought of his, he had that power, and he showed it just hours before when they arrested him in Gethsemane, when the Roman soldiers came and asked him, ask everyone, who is Jesus, the Christ? And he stood up and said, I am. But when he said I am, he said it with the power that he is the living word of God. I am. The whole troop of soldiers fell in the floor shaking in front of a man that had no weapons but the power that he was. So he was not a victim that was being arrested because he didn't have the power to defend himself. He wanted us to know that. He offered himself as the ultimate sacrifice to buy the karma of humanity and to conquer all limitations that we have, including death, so that we can come back to be what we were meant to be, unlimited beings with unlimited potentials of being, eternal, immortal, and divine. And this is the greatest feat that only love itself could do. And this man called it a failure. He failed us at the cross, he said. With that, he shows his tremendous theosophical ignorance. He should not occupy the position that he has been put in. And he is not a pope. I'm not disrespecting the position of a pope who is supposed to represent God. He is an anti-pope, an apostate, the false prophet from whose mouth comes out every time he speaks toads and frogs and reptiles. So watch out, because the spirit of the Antichrist is already working. In the computation, we are the third six of the Antichrist. Without us, the Antichrist would have no power. What we choose to be gives him power or not. We are part of his power or his failure. So, if you claim to love Jesus, love him in action, in truth, and in deed, this is the time to do so. Do not betray him and join the rows and rows of people who will fall in the trap of the Antichrist, who will magnetize people, because he offers technology, he offers selfishness, which is easy for the ego to take, aggrandizement of the ego, things that the ego is very weak in front of. So, this is my advice to you. Be close as you can to truth, to Jesus. Penetrate his words. Search for truth. And don't stop until you find that which is essential, which will give you clarity and understanding. This is the time to do so. I'm going to let you go now and explain more about this creature that is the Antichrist for the Catholic people, Dajjal for the Muslims. These two religions reject him as a deceiver and an evil entity that will do tremendous harm. And then the Jewish people remember one thing. A very old rabbi, 108-year-old Rabbi Kaduli, let you know in a paper the name of the Messiah. He wrote the name of Jesus. Pay attention to him. He wouldn't have done so if it had not become truth to him. He saw Jesus. So, I tell you, to those who are now rejecting Jesus as the Messiah, remember the meaning of the word Messiah is someone who has the power to make everything divine. It's not only a man, it's a power. And that power is within you. And that power is a power that walked this earth 2018 years ago. And his name is Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ. Until the next time, please remember what I said to you. Time is precious. We're given time to find truth. Search for it. You will find. Thank you for your attention. Till the next time.